Sorry to interrupt the conviviality and conversation, which is great. Part of the reason we're here is that very purpose. Thank you everyone for coming. My name's Tom Burton, I'm the publisher for the Mandarin. And on behalf of the Department of Economic Development, Jobs, Transport and Resource, I'd like to welcome you all here. It's a great audience we got here. You probably have been hand selected, so if you're wondering why you got here, because we thought you had some really interesting take on this broad topic. Obviously everyone comes from their own perspective, and one of the propositions today is we're all here representing our sort of professional observation, but we're not here representing our organisation. You know, that'll help us have a better conversation as we go forward. Many of you know the Mandarin. We started about 3.5 years ago. David Donaldson was one of the starting people with us. And we've now reached a point where we're here to stay, we're not going away, we're making a profit, which is rare in media. But probably more importantly, it was just an instinct about, you know, why couldn't Australia have a decent, respectful, professional coverage of the public sector? It's well over 30% of the economy. And if you broaden it to the public sphere, it's bigger than that. And that's all we tried to do, really, just make that happen and do it in a sensible proposition. Government's a very, very interesting place to work and cover. I've been in and out of it myself several times and watched it from the grandstand, watched it from inside. And it's, you know, obviously always changing. And trying to rethink things and look at new issues is really part of our DNA at the Mandarin. And we do try to work these sort of conversations. This is a great moment for us. We like working with government agencies, we often do. And we like getting in the middle of issues and trying to facilitate and promote an intelligent conversation, intelligent dialogue. So that's very much part of this. Today, we're very proud to be collaborating with the department, and in particular with their strategy and planning group, who've just been a delight to work with. You know, I work with a lot of government units, etc. And their intelligence and ability to put things together and think through things has been terrific. And a lot of the materials you've got in front of you today have been put together by them, in particular that reading pack. I often say people underestimate the importance of bringing together a lot of materials on topics. Governments often do that and put it in the back cupboard. And I say, no, publish it, get it out there. It's so important, so useful for people. And I only started this journey myself, probably 8 months ago with Richard. We're sitting down, we're talking, and Richard raised the provocative question. He said, well, just how good are we, net at really improving the position of people in disadvantage over a long time, over a period of time, rather than simply saying, okay, we fixed that particular problem and moved on. And that's where this started. Richard was interested in the work of Raj Chetty. We'll talk about that today. So Raj is a Stanford professor who's really looked at the location issue among others, and that's how this started. That was the genesis of the proposition. Before we kick off, I'd obviously like to pay respects to the traditional owners here, the Kulin Nation. It's very interesting Aboriginal history in this area. It's a very rich valley, the Yarra Valley. They occupied it here, and we're very lucky to be here in this amazing, beautiful and bountiful river valley. And looking out here, you can see just an extraordinary picture of prosperity. I grew up in Mooroopna, believe it or not. I'm probably a poster child for social mobility because I left, and ended up north of the river, and only recently came back here in the start of this year. And a couple of things really strike you. One is the prosperity, and I think Australians sometimes do us a big disfavour not recognising what an amazing position we're in. We've had 26 years of continuous growth. And Australia per capita, I think, is now the wealthiest nation on a wealth trigger. So that hasn't happened by accident. And that's, I think, led to really a very strong position for Australia and Victoria in particular. But it's those, I think that observation, what I say, because I think that's the backdrop. There is a lot of prosperity here. That's not the issue. The issue is the distribution of it and how it works as a model in terms of inclusive growth. And that was my intrigue about this. Could we marry the concept of, if you like, upward mobility in a social sense with better economic performance? And that'll be one of the questions we look at today as we work through it. The other observation just about Melbourne coming back to it is, or migrating to it, I suppose, for the first time, is just to reflect slightly on the, if you like, the model, the Melbourne model. It is quite unique, this high combination of public and private interest, working in a very considered and intelligent sort of way. You don't get that most other places in Australia. You get government working, private interest working. You don't have the cohesion in the middle. Now, often it gets a bit brutal and willing, as we know. It's not all la-la land. But it is an interesting model, and I think it's worth reflecting on that, this high level of combination. And the other piece I think is incredibly important in that model for obvious reasons, but to call it out, is the role of the non-government public sector, if you like, what we call the public sphere. And we've got a lot of people here from that part of the world, and so clearly it's part of the solution is to be working through those social enterprises and providers, but also listening to people who've got just so much experience at the coalface about what does work and what doesn't work. So really pleased to have this mix of people together today and to bring that conversation together. Talking about, if you like, the prosperity proposition, one thing that when you're just doing quick stats on Melbourne, 38% weren't born here in Melbourne. And the city's moving, from nearly 5 million now, and will double by 2050. So it's a big growth proposition here. So it's attracting a lot of people. And in these days, I've been living out at Box Hill, where there's, I think, 16 high-rise buildings slated to go up over the next 5 years. And it's an amazing transformation. So we're not doing this in a static context either. This very dynamic migration that's happening. This is the middle class of Asia coming to Australia. Previously, we didn't really take the middle classes. We took, if you like, the lower classes, inverted commas, socio-economic classes. So you've got this very powerful sort of dynamic working. It's not a static model we're playing with here. It's one that's got a lot of change working with us. And we think about these things, we've got lots of opportunity to capitalise on those changes and work through them as a proposition. In terms of just a couple of quick housekeeping issues, today we've got 3 presentations. We chose them really to get quite different lenses from people, and you'll see hopefully the method in the madness in that, to try and walk us through different propositions. We're going to have a presentation, a panel, afterwards to sort of talk it through. And then we're going to have a workshop. You've got coloured tables, and the reason for that is to try and get some sort of interaction. It's rare to get this group of people together, and so that's why we like to bring people and try and get some output out of it. The purpose today is really an exploration. We're not trying to come to an end game. This is not official policy proposition. We're trying to understand it, improve our knowledge of it, and out of this I think it'll be up for others to take it forward where we go. We're hoping to finish around 12:30. We'll have coffee about 10. And there'll be light lunch, Victorian government sponsored, so it'll be a sandwich with peanut butter on it, but you'll love it, so it'll be terrific. It's Chatham House. Chatham House means, in my game, means we don't report it. We've got one caveat to that, you'll see where we go. Dave and I are the only 2 journalists here. But Chatham House really means, try and have a free and frank conversation. We don't take it out of here. It stays in the room as propositions, and that's obviously important. I said before, the context is people here to listen and learn and ask questions, and so we don't want people to feel they're representing the agency or what they say is reflective of their agency. We're not here for that. We've got a video operating here. We're going to video the 3 presentations and capture the audio, and then we'll stop. We'll capture a little bit of video footage afterwards, just as an overlay, and then try and bring that together. And then David's got the honourable task of trying to pull it together, and this is our one caveat on Chatham House. We'll do what we call a high-level takeaway article out of it to capture the insights. We do it in an anonymised way, and it's really to be able to socialise what some of these insights were from today and bring them back, and we'll publish that. We'll circulate that around for feedback, and then we'll publish it. So that'll be the outputs in that side of things. A couple of other things. Social mobility, from my perspective, I started the journey when I was talking to Richard, really. It's a simple concept, trying to move people out of their disadvantage over the long term. But once you drill into it, it's incredibly complex in its application. And if I had one piece of advice is, if you've got a certain view of it, just hold on to that, listen and understand and see the different contexts at which it applies. It's an intriguing concept, and it's one that attracts a lot of people because it seems to be a framework that could possibly allow us to have a conversation that's both about inclusion and prosperity. And I think we've struggled at that, big time, as a not just here but across the world. So I'd certainly provoke people to see it as a framework, as a proposition. It can be this big or it can be down here, depending where you want to put it. So it's got a lot of dimensions and a lot of angles. Context obviously is very important. We've got a big debate happening worldwide, quite an angry debate in some contexts. And that's me saying stop. And we've got a debate that's happening everywhere around that proposition. And so we want to try and understand it, but not put it in a political context. Clearly, there's been a lot of prosperity around the world, probably the biggest economic growth period the world's ever seen in terms of wealth creation. But we're struggling to distribute it in a way that everyone gets, and that's, I think, one of the things we're going to look at. Probably three other propositions before we kick off. It is a challenging space, and I've made a lifestyle out of this. There's no such thing as dumb questions. So we've got some real experts here, real experts, and we've got some people who aren't. And so I think often the dumb questions are the ones that everyone else wants to ask but won't ask, so please feel free to do that. It's clearly a space where there's going to be a collaborative proposition. It's not going to be a government-only exercise. It can't be. We've got a citizen lens, we've got a social enterprise lens, we've got a business lens, we've got academics, we've got government. So I'd certainly encourage that type of proposition, that whatever comes out of this is going to have to be a collaborative piece. And we're seeing lots of areas where government's having to play, in a much more principled way, collaborative role rather than the lead role. And in many ways people are welcoming that because it allows a much broader and bigger conversation in that context. But I think it's an important sort of frame to try and think about that. And you're seeing, particularly in the US now, some very big conversations about trying to get big scale alignment, not just, if you like, everyone nodding and agreeing, but really strong alignment, and focused alignment around outcomes on that sort of proposition. It may well be this is a good case model for that type of thing. But clearly you want those voices to be heard around all that proposition. And obviously the very last point to make, today we're going to have my favourite conversation, a really chewy policy wonk conversation. But clearly out in the real world, there's a lot of people who are really hurting. There's a lot of people in grief and pain and in disadvantage, and we don't want to forget that proposition. That's the central proposition. Humans really struggling in pain for all sorts of reasons. And as we enjoy, a fabulous venue, a great view, and a delightful sort of place to be, a lot of people don't have that proposition. And so these are real people with real issues, real communities with real issues, and we obviously don't want to forget that.